everyone. My name is Wendy Hersh. I am a musician and music teacher here in the Santa Clarita Valley. And I'm here today to talk to you about an app that I've been using since April. It's called JAMKAZAM. You may have heard that it's impossible to jam with people online on the internet. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not. It is possible, and I've been doing it since April. There are many platforms out there. The only one I'm familiar with is JAMKAZAM, but I encourage you to search online for other ones. I know some people use one that's called Jamulus, and that is server-based. I've only tried that once, so I really can't talk about that one. But I'm here to tell you all about JAMKAZAM. It is a free app. And since April, it's had many updates that have improved some aspects of the program. There are a lot of things I love about it, a couple things maybe not so great. But if you're a musician and you are going through withdrawal symptoms of playing with other musicians, this is the app for you. So since I joined in April, I've made over 60 JAMKAZAM friends. These are people that I have never met, possibly may never meet. And I've played with them in at least one session, and some people many, many sessions over a period of months. And some people I now consider actual real friends. We have each other's email, we're Facebook friends, we text, we tell jokes. It's great. I've jammed with people in various parts of Canada. I've also jammed with someone as far away as Buenos Aires, was not always the greatest. I've jammed with people in many, many states, East Coast and West Coast. The best jam sessions are with people that are closer to you, and that's due to latency, which I'll get into in a second. JAMKAZAM is not perfect. Every session is not great, but I will tell you, for me, it's been worth it to deal with the ups and downs, because I've had hours and hours of fun just jamming with random people, random songs that I've never played, many songs I've never heard before, in genres that I don't consider my specialty. So you just never know what's going to happen. I know this panel was about how to do band rehearsals. I'm in several bands. Unfortunately, none of the musicians in all of my bands have joined JAMKAZAM, but that doesn't mean that you cannot do it with your band. Everybody just has to have the willingness to deal with the technical setup, which is sometimes easy and sometimes not, depends on your particular situation. Sometimes JAMKAZAM can work great. You get on a session, you have 2 hours of nonstop fun. And you know, normally if you were doing a gig in 2 hours, you would have had 2 breaks. JAMKAZAM will go 2 hours nonstop. Sometimes the app is a little glitchy, and so you have to deal with sometimes occasional audio dropout. Sometimes there's oddball noises. I've heard everything that sounds like it's an alien from outer space to just random noises, sounds like cymbals. About a week ago, there was a total JAMKAZAM shutdown. Like, everybody got locked out of their sessions, and I'm thinking there was probably a big power outage in the main server, and it probably was due to the fires, because I know there's been a lot of power outages, and from the heat also. So you just have to know, if you're going to try this, you have to deal with a not perfect situation, but believe me, it's worth it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been doing this almost every day since April. So it provides a lot of joy. And I now have, like I said, a core of musicians who we have good latency, we have good rapport, we tell jokes, we tell stories, and we're all the same level of musicianship, and you know, we jive well. So that's really nice. In the beginning, when I first went on JAMKAZAM, I didn't know anybody. So I just joined a bunch of random sessions. And from those random sessions, I found musicians who I enjoyed their playing. We had good latency, sense of humor, whatever it was, and we friended each other. Now, that doesn't mean that some of these friends that I made in the beginning, I'm dying to play with again, because since that time, I've met people that have better sound quality, better musicianship, and most importantly, good latency. Also, I now, through my core bunch of friends, we sometimes schedule sessions ahead of time. I will get an email that says, hey, Wendy, are you available for a session Thursday morning at 10? We're going to play some jazz. Great. Or I might get a message through JAMKAZAM saying, Wendy, we're going to play some classic rock 80s Friday night. You available? So you can message people through the app, or if you have their private info, you can contact them and set up. Sometimes we'll set up a session and we'll say what songs we're going to do ahead of time. So that means everybody comes to this session just like you would come to a rehearsal. You know your part. You have the charts. You can also send charts through JAMKAZAM, or people will sometimes just send them email or text. I've done all of the above. So the biggest issue with playing with other musicians online is the word latency. And here's an easy way to think about what latency is. Think of a thunderstorm. You see the lightning, and maybe a couple of seconds later, you hear the thunder. So the latency is the difference between when you see the lightning and you hear the thunder. So imagine I'm a bass player playing in Santa Clarita, jamming with a drummer in Florida, and our latency might be 70 milliseconds. So that means we're not hearing each other like we were in a live room. If you've ever been to a big concert and you're near the stage, you hear everything right as it happens. And if you go way far away, you start hearing a lag time. The longer, the higher the number of milliseconds of latency, the greater the delay. If your musicians are all in Santa Clarita, you should all have great latency if you have good equipment, and then it's no problem. Like I said, I've been able to jam with people in Canada, in Texas, in Florida. You just have to learn to adapt your sense of what is time, where is the beat. Some sessions I've joined with random people, and I just have to excuse myself. You folks are great musicians, but the latency is killing me. Have a great time, and I have to leave the session. And everybody understands because we're all under the same situation. It might be a little bit more important for me as a bass player because I like to lock in with the drummer. Horn players, they can kind of play around the beat. I have a brother that uses JAMKAZAM, and the latency doesn't bother him as much as it does bother me. You'll also find a wide variety of musicianship, from people who are pros, they've been doing this for forever, to people who know 3 chords and they just want to, you know, with their distortion. You also find people that have good jam manners and some not, as in every part of life. So there's also a lot of resources to help you find out how to get your setup optimum. There's PDF files online, there's YouTubes. I want to share some links, and maybe we'll figure out how to get you guys the PDF files. I'm not sure how to do that. There's also a great Facebook group called JAMKAZAM Jammers, where you can go on and just say, hey, I'm new, I'm looking for people to jam with. And you can actually, through that group, find local people. So here's what you need to get working. You need a good computer with a good processing power. You need a wired Ethernet cable that goes directly from your router to your computer. JAMKAZAM will not work on Wi-Fi because you're going to get way too much latency. And now we know that that's bad. You need some kind of audio interface. That's where you plug in your microphone and your guitar or whatever instrument. You need the microphone and a cable. Even if you don't sing, it's helpful to have a microphone so you can talk to the other musicians in the session and say, hey, you know, what key are we doing this song in? Or, you know, I would love to play such and such song. Let me send you the chart. You need good quality headphones because you're not going to be playing through speakers, because otherwise you're going to get feedback and echo, and we don't want that. You need a good cable to go from your instrument to the interface. Now, I've played with some people that play acoustic drums and they mic them. Other people have electronic drums. Same thing with keyboards. Some people have an electric keyboard, you just plug it right in. Other people have a mic on their piano. So I'm going to share some things on the screen so you can see how we deal with this. The first thing you need to go is to download the app. So you just type in JAMKAZAM.com and you will get this opening page, and you can see it's free. You just sign up with your email. The next thing you need to do, so let me show you a sample of, hold on, that didn't share the right thing. The next thing we have here is just a sample of an audio interface. I happen to have a Scarlett. So you can see this one, you can plug in an instrument and a mic, and you need to turn direct monitoring off, because otherwise you're going to hear yourself differently than you hear everybody else. And there's lots of information on that. So now you've downloaded the app and you go to open it. And the first thing you see is this opening screen, and you can see you can click on to create a session, and you can create an open session that anybody can join randomly. So you'll be in your session and people just pop in and out from all over. Or you can create a session that says, you know, I'm playing jazz today and I'm only going to invite my friends. So nobody else can just pop in and pop out. Or you can go to this area where it says find a session, and you'll see any session that's open at that moment. And you might say, oh, I'm looking for a jazz session. Great, I see there's a jazz session. Oh, they already have a bass player, so I'm not going to join. You don't want two bass players in the session. Or, oh, hey, you know what? There's a Motown session. I'm going to join that. They don't have a bass player. There's also a feature I've never used. You can download jam tracks. And then let's say you're in a session and there's no bass player. You can put on a jam track and put the bass player on. But for people that want to do rehearsals with their bands, you would stick with create a session and just only invite your friends. So it's just as if you were in the same room rehearsing, except you only hear each other in the headphones. There is a way to do video on JAMKAZAM, but it makes latency worse. So you don't want to do that. What I've done sometimes is run a Zoom session, turn the video off on Zoom. So if you want to see the other musicians, you can do that. So you can see in this window, I think I got 68 friends. So when they're highlighted in white, that means they're online at that moment. I can't scroll down because I'm not actually in the app. You would see all your friends and it would say they're online or not. You can search for friends up here if you want to add your bandmates. There's also a chat feature where you can add PDF files. Down here, notifications. It might say, hey, you've been invited to a session by AJ. Or it might say, you know, so-and-so is online, do you want to join them? So, and over here, that's your name. I put Wendy bass Hersh. So when people see me in a session, they know, oh, there's already a bass player. So they're not going to have 3 other bass players join. This pull down menu over here is where you're going to see how to set up your audio gear. All right. When you set up your when you click on the set up the audio gear, you will see this. So you can see that I've got my Scarlett. My left channel is going to be for vocal. My right channel is for bass. It shows I'm connected. So you have to do that when you first join, or nobody will hear you. There's a lot more detailed setup, and you can go on all kinds of YouTube videos and things like that. Here is just a picture that shows a bunch of friends, and it shows where they are. So I might say, oh, you know what? I played with this guy. He's in New Jersey. He was a great musician, but the latency wasn't that great. Here's somebody in New York. This is just a random group of some of my JAMKAZAM friends. When you're in a session, let me find, where did that go? Here we go. When you're in a session, on the left, it's going to show your tracks. So it shows my voice and my bass. That day I was having yellow. And these dots will show what your latency is. And most of the time it's kind of blinking between yellow and green for me. On this side, this shows who is in your session and what their instrument is. So you can see, and there's a way, this is where you can adjust their volume. You can also pan left or right. So for instance, if you're in a session with guitar and bass, or guitar and maybe there's two guitars, you want one guitar on the left, one guitar on the right. These dots, when you hover over them, when you're in a session, will show you what your latency is to that person. Optimum is green or yellow. Red doesn't necessarily mean bad, and these will often change. When you're in a session, and let's say it starts being glitchy, you hear some noises or people are dropping out, this button right here is your friend, resync. So when you go on JAMKAZAM and people say resync, resync, which you'll do several times during a session, you hit this button and it just kind of clears things out, especially if you've had people popping in and out of your session. If you want to attach a chart so that the other musicians can see, you open up this thing that says files. You'll get a drop-down menu that says add files from your computer, and then it will show up in the chat. You can also record your sessions. If you do record, you have to make sure all the musicians stay in JAMKAZAM and don't quit the program before the program has to save all of their tracks. All right. The next slide I'm showing you, I was really, really happy because you can see my latency was 8.3 milliseconds. Woohoo! All green. And like I said, sometimes during a session, they will go between green and yellow. One area right here where it says input jitter, that can cause problems if you have a bunch of gamers in your house and everybody's using the same internet connection. And so it's going to make your session, your audio, not that great. So tell your people not to be on a game when you're doing JAMKAZAM. All right, have we gone through all of our slides? Okay. Here is, let's see, yeah, here we go. Here's something that's available online. It's a whole big long thing on remote band rehearsals. It talks about latency. There are some people that do what's called port forwarding. I have not had to do that in mine. I will say I'm on a Mac computer, and Mac is a lot easier because it uses core audio. So I didn't need to use any driver for my audio interface. But you can see this is pretty involved here with lots of clickable links. If you scroll way down, it talks about various applications that you can use, and JAMKAZAM is listed somewhere down there, way down. So I'll have to figure out with Jeff how to get you this particular PDF. There's also one more that I'd like to share. Let me see what happened to it. Let me find it. It was somebody that put together a whole guide to JAMKAZAM. Here it is. Let me share the screen. Okay. Annie's JAMKAZAM, hopefully made simple. You could see she even has a table of contents. So all the things that I kind of whizzed through today, you can find in much more detail here. Talking about the settings, everything, even what to expect. Look, she even says JAMKAZAM is dodgy. Some days are better than others, that's for sure. But like I said, I've been dealing with this, or I've been enjoying the app since April. And if I didn't get enough joy out of it, I wouldn't deal with the dodginess or the glitchiness. Nobody would, because why bother? And I've had so much joy, I actually contributed to the GoFundMe to help make the app even better. So I hope that gives you a brief idea of how JAMKAZAM works. Like I said, you can schedule sessions, private sessions, if you want to only play with your bandmates. But there's no harm in joining just random sessions and meeting some new players and getting to know people. I've jammed with a lot of people in the Seattle area, incredible musicians. And normally in bands, I've played classic rock and pop and things like that. And I've played so much jazz in JAMKAZAM that it's obviously making my chops better, because people now request me for jazz sessions, which I think is pretty funny. Anyway, again, my name is Wendy Hersh, and I hope that you are inspired to download the app and try it. If you do, find me on JAMKAZAM at Wendy Bass Hersh, and let's jam.
Hello all, my name is Emily Ross, and I've been using Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and Jamulus to make music with friends all across the country and even a few from abroad. So I am an avid shape note singer, and most of the examples you'll be hearing in this video come from singing from this book, The Sacred Harp. It was originally published in 1844, and it's basically a bunch of hymns written in 4-part harmony. And what we would do in the before times would be to sit together in a square and just sing a cappella as loud as we could at one another. And it's weird and delightful and attracts all sorts of different people from very diverse backgrounds who just really love singing these old songs. So prior to the pandemic, I was singing 2 or 3 times a week. And when the lockdown happened, it became extremely important for me to figure out how to sing with other people. On a whim one day, I started broadcasting myself singing along with another friend's live stream. And I was so surprised and delighted by how much it felt like sitting in the same room and singing with them, even though I was all the way across the country and they couldn't hear me until after they were finished. So after that, we started adding more parts, and pretty quickly, singing in 4-part harmony this way became a regular activity for our community. Our community quickly came up with some other solutions to this problem, including the Zoom singing, also known as a zinging, where we would take turns picking out different YouTube videos to sing along with, all on mute in the Zoom room. And it's a great way to see one another and interact, but it just doesn't feel like an authentic way of making music. I find the Jamulists and the live overdubbing much more satisfying. And so here is an example of the live stream overdubbing.
129. What party spies and company of travelers are these that walk in yonder narrow way along the rugged maze? Oh, they are of our royal line, all children of a king, as loving immortal realms divine, and loud for joy they sing.
So in this example, I stitched together 3 completed live streams. The duo on the left were the ones who started out live streaming. I added a layer to theirs, and the person on the right listened to my video and added another layer, which is the audio you hear. The basic technique is as follows. The first person starting off the chain just starts live streaming. The second person in line listens to the first person's live stream with their speakers turned up and then broadcasts themselves playing along. The second step can be repeated 2 or 3 times before the sound quality starts to decay too much. And it also depends on the microphone quality, internet speed, and how loudly you can play the previous person's live stream for how well the sound's going to come out. There are many ways to set this up. I prefer to use my computer hooked up to speakers to listen, and I use my phone to live stream just because the microphone in it is much better than my computer's. Some people use 2 non-computer devices, such as a tablet and a phone. And you can also just use 2 tabs open in your browser on your computer, one to listen and one for broadcasting. So this next example gives you an idea of what it sounds like 4 streamers down the line. I made this video asynchronously with Facebook Live and using my standard setup for all the videos. So here is a little bit of Sophrony.
Love 'em and leave 'em, kiss 'em and grieve 'em. That used to be my motto, so high, till my Sophrony left me so lonely, and now there's a teardrop in my eye.
So as you can hear, it's not the best sound quality, but all the parts are coming through pretty clearly. And this is 4 streamers down the line using my setup, which is just some old desktop speakers and my phone, which has a pretty decent microphone in it. So once again, here is the basic setup for live stream overdubbing. The first streamer only streams and can't hear any of the other people. The second streamer listens to the first stream with the volume up and streams themselves. The third streamer listens only to the second stream and can hear first and second, and they stream along. And the fourth streamer listens to the third streamer and they can hear 1, 2, and 3. And there are some other fun ways you can do this. For example, by using different hubs of people. For example, having a bunch of people go off the third person or go off the second person. Or if you stick to the standard chain, it's really easy to leapfrog leaders. The second person stops listening to the first person, and the first person starts listening to the fourth person and takes the fourth person's place in line. And you can continue this process to switch leaders. As you will see in the example, all of the downstream people are at the mercy of the first streamer. So it can be fun to switch it up every once in a while.
The road to glory seems so long, and sorrows often take my song. I'm going to a better land. I'm going to a better land where troubles are untold. We'll sing around the throne in sweet accord, adoring Jesus, our dear Lord. From Jesus' side I will not stray. I know He'll guide me all the way. I'm going to a better land. I'm going to a better land where troubles are untold. We'll sing around the throne in sweet accord, adoring Jesus, our dear Lord. From now it is not very far to heaven where my treasures are. I'm going to a better land. I'm going to a better land where troubles are untold. We'll sing around the throne in sweet accord, adoring Jesus, our dear Lord. I'm going to a better land. I'm going to a better land where troubles are untold. We'll sing around the throne in sweet accord, adoring Jesus, our dear Lord. I'm going to a better land. I'm going to a better land where troubles are untold. We'll sing around the throne in sweet accord, adoring Jesus, our dear Lord.
So, as you can see from that example, it's super important for the first streamers to just move forward confidently, even when there are some hiccups. And you can also see that they are 100% in charge. It's pretty much impossible for the downstream streamers to communicate with the first people in the middle of a song, so they just have to be willing to go with the flow. And so that's another reason I really like the leapfrogging method. It gives the other streamers the opportunity to lead and the original leader to hear all of the other parts that they wouldn't be able to hear otherwise. So I really enjoy using this medium for making music. It's really nice to be able to use visual cues in real time. Communication via the comments, however, is a little bit more complicated because there is a pretty significant delay involved. So if you're commenting on a specific song, it's important to reference the song. Otherwise, the primary streamers won't know what you're talking about because it'll pop up halfway through the next song, possibly. Another reason I really like this method is that it's technologically pretty simple. The concept can be a little bit hard to convey, but the equipment can usually be scrounged up, and you don't really need fancy internet to participate. Any streaming platform will work for this method, but it may require a slightly different setup. For example, if you're using Instagram Live for both streaming and listening, you'll need 2 devices with the app installed on them. I lean towards using Facebook Live because the privacy settings can be very specifically set. You can share with just the people that you want to play with, or with the entire world, or anywhere in between. I usually share it with the public because I have quite a few friends who do not want to be involved on Facebook at all. So once the video is over, they can view it without having an account, which is really nice. If you choose to, you can save the final video for others to enjoy asynchronously. The two men from the examples are almost always the initial streamers, and so they often go back and look at the saved videos so they get to hear the other parts of the singing. The last streamer's video provides a nice end product for the session and can be used to practice with if you are doing this for a choir or a band. Overdubbing asynchronously doesn't feel exactly the same as singing live, but you can still use the same process with videos that have already been posted. This method works really well for written music in particular because you have a roadmap in front of you to follow along with. For jamming, I think a little bit more planning is required. For example, having a plan on how to indicate who takes a break when, which could just be as simple as saying, "Guitars, take it away," or having the first streamer say that. And being mindful of the comments, I think, is a lot more important. There needs to be some time for tuning and a little bit more patience if there are some difficulties downstream. I could see this working out really well for choir practice. You could start streaming with the accompaniment and then have a core group stream the other parts, or include everybody by using the hub method, depending on what your needs are. Another reason I really love this method is that distance isn't an issue because of how we're overcoming the latency, just through overdubbing. So you can do it with people on the other side of the planet without an issue, which is pretty cool. For the technologically more inclined, there is this program called OBS that some people have been using. It stands for Open Broadcaster Software, and it allows you to port the computer audio from the previous live stream and allows you to live stream with that. So you listen to it through your headphones instead of on speakers, and you record using a microphone. My computer cannot handle this thing, but theoretically you could have a much longer chain using this technology. So we've had some bigger, more formal singing events using this method where 100 people or so will watch and sing along at home without live streaming themselves, with a handful of people live streaming along. A couple of these were to replace big singings that had been canceled. And although it isn't anywhere close to being the same as the real thing, it's a decent substitute for these strange times we're in. And we've also had the regularly scheduled weekly singing where there are 4 people singing along using this method. However, I've also just been spontaneously starting streams, and sometimes people will hop on the chain and sometimes people won't, but it's still something for everyone to look forward to. So, there's a whole bunch of different ways to use this method, and I hope you have fun exploring it and playing around with everything. And now on to Jamulus. So Jamulus is a free program that allows for low latency networked audio, which allows musicians to make music in real time almost. There is a slight delay that is basically imperceptible if you're within a certain range of one another and also have strong internet connections. It requires more of a technical setup than the streaming method, but it is an absolute delight to use once everyone gets their settings sorted out. Here is an example of singing on Jamulus.
Come on, my partners in distress. We have a home in glory. My comrades through the wilderness. We have a home in glory. Oh, glory. Oh, glory. There's to me now in paradise to have a home in glory.
So to use Jamulus, you will need a computer with Jamulus installed on it, headphones, a microphone, a decent internet connection, and an Ethernet cable. So for the headphones, I just use these ones with the built-in microphone, and they work just fine for singing. Although, depending on what your needs are, it might be better for you to have an external microphone set up and a headset. And also, I have a USB dongle that plugs into my laptop, and I connect the Ethernet cable in through that. There are a ton of great resources online for how to get set up with Jamulus, so I'm just gonna walk you through some of my little tips. The biggest thing to keep in mind is to be patient with getting set up. It is a bigger learning curve to figure everything out. Everybody's operating system is different and it works a little bit differently. So just taking time to work on the technological kinks and not giving up is probably the biggest barrier to entry. But once you get up and running, it really is wonderful to use. Another thing to keep in mind is that it is low latency, not no latency. So there can be a tendency to slow down, which can at times be frustrating. But again, it just takes a lot of patience to work through these little kinks. So making music without any visual cues whatsoever is a learning experience all of its own. I would recommend either counting in or snapping to keep the tempo up if you're having trouble with that. My favorite way that we're using Jamulus right now is to have a singing on Jamulus and then have one of the singers pipe that audio from Jamulus into Zoom. And in the Zoom call, anybody can join in. As you know, people can dial in who only have phones and don't have computers. So this is a really great way to keep community members who don't have a computer involved in your music making. The next and final example is an excerpt from one of these Zoom Jamulus hybrids. We had about 50 people on Zoom and a dozen or so singers on Jamulus, and I didn't get everybody's permission, so we do not have the video of the Zoom call, but we do have the audio from the Jamulus, so you will be hearing those singers.
When through the turntail the world tempest is streaming, when our waves the red lightning is gleaming, nor hope lends a ray the poor sea unto charity, nor hope lends a ray the spiritually shine, save Lord, or we perish. Nor hope lends a ray the poor sea unto charity, nor hope lends a ray the poor spiritually shine, to our Maker, save Lord, or we perish.
So as you can hear in the example, the audio isn't always perfect. There's some crackling here and there, and we aren't always singing together perfectly. But this is the closest approximation of singing in real time that I've experienced. Jamulus has become, I feel like, the most important tool for singing with one another since the beginning of the pandemic, and I hope you'll give it a try. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope this inspired you to try some of these tools out and create your own mashups of technology. There's all sorts of different combinations that I'm sure we have not tried, so get out there and play some music.